Ablat Gemara. We are up to today that Yudches Amid Aleph. And just to remind you quickly what's going on. So we're talking about somebody who's Makabel Nazir, accepted Nazirs while they were standing inside a cemetery. And so we say that obviously they have the tummy, and then when they come out, whether they have to accept the Naziris for the tumor is over. It's automatic. It comes on as soon as the Naziris is over. They don't bring a carbon. You only bring a carbon if you were first a Nazir Tahir for a while, and then you became Tameh. But not if you were standing in the cemetery from the very outset. So you would never read a Nazir Tahir. Then we had a whole discussion, which we just concluded, as to whether he needs to take a haircut or not. And we concluded that you don't take a haircut. You don't bring a carbon, you don't take a haircut. So now we're up to Gemara Yechesam and Aleph, about 12 lines into the page. First line is Mantana. So Mantana Hadatana Rabban. Who's the author of the following brisa? The brisa is as follows. What is the difference between someone who was an ordinary Nazir and then became Tameh, or someone who was never a proper Nazir because he accepted Naziris while he was standing in the cemetery? Ein ben Tameh shen Nazir. The Nazir Toishrit, but there's no difference between somebody who was Tameh and became a Nazir while he was standing in the cemetery, or somebody who took on Naziris properly and was a Nazir for a short while and then became Tameh. The difference is only Tameh shen Nazir. If somebody was in the cemetery when he took upon his own Naziris, Shvi Shalai, he counts 7 days. The seventh day, because he doesn't have to bring a carbon. So the 7th day, the morning finishes his 7th day. He got sprinkled, sprayed. He's over. He's torn out, and that 7th day in the afternoon starts day number 1 of his new count of Naziris of Tahir. But another Tahir Shanid. But if you were a Tahir Nazir, you became Tameh. Not only have to wait 7 clean days and you lose your original days, you need to wait till the 8th day to bring the carbon. So Ein Shvi Shlei Olam Minyan. His 7th day is not part of the. He does not start counting his clean days from the 7th day. He has to wait till the 8th day till he brings the carbon. So who's the author of that? Who makes that distinction? Amar Chizr says must be Rebbe. What do you mean must be Rebbe? We'll soon see who argues with Rebbe. Because Amar Rebbe said, Rebbe says that if you were Torah and you became a Tameh, you wait for your 7 days and you do not start counting again, resume count or start counting again your clean days until the 8th day, until when you can bring your kabbanas. Because his colleague who argues with him, which is Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda. What does Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda say? Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda says, the Amar, Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda is of the opinion, he holds that even if you were a regular Nazir and then you became Tameh, from the 7th day onwards, even before you bring your kabbanas, you can already start counting your new Naziris. Where do you find this argument? The Talmud the Brisa. It says in the pasuk, the Kidesh es Roishaim, that this Nazir, after he brings his chatas and oilen, and so it says the pasuk as follows: that v'chiper olav mashachata, he will be forgiven for what he sinned, and the fact that he became contaminated, he defiled himself. And then it says v'kidesh es Roishaim, he will sanctify his head. Knows he becomes a Nazir by on that day. Which day we're talking about? Says Rabbi b'yom havos kabbanos, the day that he brings kabbanos on the 8th day. Divrei Rabbi. These are the words of Rabbi. Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda. Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda says b'yom taglachtai. He says the day that you bring your kabbanos, we call it haircut because it all comes together. The day you bring on the 8th days when you start counting. Says the Gemara v'hadatnan. So we have a Mishnah which says the following. And we'll try to work out who does it conform with. It says there's a heichitim, so there's a possibility where Nazir shenitma tumeis harba. It's possible for Nazir to continuously become Tameh before he completes his Naziris, and yet any male carbon only brings 1 carbon. How is that possible? If you're telling me it's not like one long tumah, it's as if you say became Tameh, became Torah, Tameh, and Torah, and yet you only bring 1 carbon. Every time you became Torah and then you become Tameh again, shouldn't you be bringing a 2nd carbon? So how can that work out? But according to Rebbe, it makes sense. According to Rabbi Yeshua, it makes sense. Man Tana, Amar Chiz, Rabbi Yeshua. Why does it make sense to Rabbi Yeshua? Because Rabbi Yeshua says, when do you start count? When do you become Torah? On the seventh day. When do you start counting your new Naziris? On the seventh day. So what happened was you became Tamei. You count your 7 days in the morning. You're now Torah. You become Tamei again the seventh day in the afternoon. Okay, it's a new tumah, but it's a new tumah, but you only bring one carbon. Why? Because you did not become obligated to bring a carbon until day number 8, but you never had a day number 8, because every time day number 7 you became tummy again. So therefore, as far as the carbon is concerned, it's one carbon, but as far as tumas is concerned, there's many repeated tumas. Because Rabbi Yeshua says, when do you start counting again your Torah zeros for the 7th day? Therefore, we can find you became Tamei on the 7th day. Then the 7th day again in the morning you became Torah, in the afternoon you became Tamei again. And Kivan de la Yotza Shah Harui Lavakar. So on the one hand, you can repeating, you're becoming Tamei again and again and again, many times, and you're committing an Aveda. But yet, Kivan de la Yotza Shah Harui Lavakar, since you never reach the 8th day, you would never get obligated to bring a carbon for any of those sets of tumah, 7 days. To bring one carbon. One carbon carries all the tumas. Why can't it be according to Rebbe? Because the Itema Rebbe, if you can say follow Rebbe, it doesn't work. Why? Let's see what happened. Either Nitma Bishvi, but you can't let's say Tumah on the 7th day. He started Naziris properly, then became Tummy on the 7th day, and then 7 days later, Chazav and Nitmushim became Tummy again on the 7th day. According to Rebbe, you don't become Torah, you don't start counting the new days until the 8th day. So if every 7th day you became Tummy again, you never got out of your Tumah. It's one continuous Tumah. Is Kula Tumah Richtig, is one long Tumah. Unless the Ida Nitma Vishmini, you'll tell me according to Rebbe, maybe he became Tummy on the 8th day. Well, the 8th day you can also already bring a carbon. So not only is it a new Tumah, but it's also a new carbon. You'll be bringing a carbon for every time you become tummy. The Chazid Mishri had a Yatza Shah Shrum of a carbon. You already were exposed to the chiyuv of a carbon, so therefore not only would it be a number of tumas, but it would also be a number of kabbanas. So it doesn't work out according to that. Only according to Rabbi Yeshua Yehuda, who says on the 7th day you start counting in new Naziris, but on the 8th days when you bring a carbon. So if you continue becoming tummy on the 7th day, you're becoming tummy again and again and again. But you still only bring one carbon because you never yet were obligated to bring a carbon. The Eden Bishmini had the Chol Bishmini had the Yotza Shah should a carbon. There came time to bring carbon. Now let's go and ask. My time with it. What are they arguing about? Omicron says the pasuk. The pasuk starts off. You should bring. If you take the pasuk literally, you should bring and read it the way that it's written. You had a kapara, an atonement. You brought kabbalas ala nefesh for the fact that you became tamei. And then the pasuk says, "Well, how do the kiddush rosh sanctify your head?" It sounds clearly familiar. When do you start counting your naziris again? After you brought your kabbalas. So that's what Rebbe says. No, but Rabbi Yehuda, how's he going to argue that? Because in Cain, he has a problem. There's 2 extra words in that pasuk. If the Torah would have just said, bring your kabbalas and then sanctify your head, then Rebbe is right. After your kabbalas, you sanctify your head. Why does the Torah have to add the word bayemahu on that day? Isn't that how you read the pasuk without bayemahu? So im Cain leno krav the kiddush rosh. Let it just say the kiddush rosh. Bayemahu lamali. What does it come to add bayemahu? Must be coming to change the literal meaning. It cannot mean wait to the after the Kabbalah is the 8th day. That's when you start counting your new term. Because if so, why say bayemahu? To know you go back and say it must be talking about the 7th day. It must be talking about the 7th day. Bayemahu means that by that day, not the day after the Kabbalah, the day that you finished your 7 days of Tumah, that's the day you begin counting your new set of Naziris. No, Rebbe, what's Rebbe can do with the extra words bayemahu? But Rebbe now makes bayemahu. Rebbe will tell you to teach you another din altogether. Lahachidas, Loim tell you once you reach the 8th day bayemahu, even though practically speaking you didn't bring your kabbanas, but because you have the obligation to bring the kabbanas, you start counting again your naziris. And that's bayemahu. Because if you just read the Chippah, you would think first you have to literally bring your kabbalas and then you start counting. So by Yemahu on that day, regardless whether you brought the carbon or not. Says Gemara, my duchke. So it's a simple question. We'll have this discussion of Masechta Krisis. When you bring a carbon on the eighth day in the morning, but at night you don't bring a carbon because of a side issue. We don't bring carbonos at night. So how do we understand it? There's two ways of understanding it. One way of understanding it is, in theory, you already have the obligation to bring a carbon the night of the eighth day. Practically, for a side reason, you cannot. So do we say Laila Mechusazman or Lav Mechusazman? Do we say Lav Mechusazman, which means that it's the eighth day already, even though you're not going to bring the carbon, but the fact that it's the eighth day means it's as if you already have the obligation to bring a carbon. Or so therefore you can start counting already at night the new Naziris. Or do we say no? Laila Mechusazman, there's no carbon. And since the fact is you cannot bring a carbon, that means you don't have an obligation yet till the morning. So when do you start counting your new Naziris? In the morning. Says the Gemara. So now Chizda might look at Rabbi Yehuda. Why do you have to look like Rabbi Yehuda? Look, well, you can also look like Rabbi. How? You're going to nitmid the chazi belel shmini. What happens if you became tummy the night of the eighth day? So you completed your full 7 days. You became tummy the night of the eighth day. By becoming tummy, it's a new. You definitely start counting the night of the eighth day, hopefully. I mean, maybe. And then you start counting the night of the eighth day. That's a new set of Naziris, but you don't, and Rebbe, and you don't bring a carbon till the morning. So therefore, as far as carbon is concerned, you weren't obligated yet to carbon, so it's one long carbon. As far as Tum is concerned, it's a new series. So you'll have become tummy again and again and again. Why doesn't it say that? You can only draw one conclusion from that. And that is, according to Rebbe, at night, since you cannot bring a carbon, nor can you begin counting your new Naziris as well. Because Laila Mechus is mine. Why doesn't he learn? But Rebbe, even Lemuk like Rebbe, the fact that he doesn't interpret like Rebbe, Lema Kasava, it must be that he holds that at night it's not Mechusas Man. That means that he holds that at night as if you're already chayv in a carbon. Must be that Rebbe holds that at night you're already chayv in a carbon, and therefore it's not only a new tumah every time, it's also a new carbon. Every time. So you can't have a situation where you have a new tumah but without a new carbon, according to Rebbe. Rabbi says, even if Rav Chizda would hold that Laila is Mechusas Man, which means you don't bring the carbon until the morning, it still cannot work like a Rebbe. Why not? Because whether you count your new Naziris or not will depend when the Chiyuv of carbon is. If you say Laila Mechusas Man, if you say that at night there's no obligation to bring a carbon because you cannot bring it till the morning, then Amos Mechzel carbon Litzafra. When can you bring a carbon in the morning? Isn't it Nami Lechayla Tzafra? So too, you don't start counting your new Naziris until the morning, because the Gemara thought in the beginning that the two maybe are not really linked to each other. So the carbon is in the morning, and you can start counting at night, and therefore you can work out according to Rebbe. So say no. If the carbon is in the morning, then also the new Naziris in the morning. And then if you tell me Laila and if you tell me that you have an obligation of the carbon already at night, even though practically speaking you cannot bring it, then you start counting your Naziris at night as well. So there is the counting of Naziris and the carbon always go hand in hand. According to Rebbe, every time you have a new Naziris, every time you have a new Tumah, it's a new carbon. The Naziris Tahira Chayla Mutter from last night. Okay, so Tan Rabbanon, it says in Gufa, but really we haven't looked yet. So just Tan Rabbanon, we learn. What happens if Nitma B'Shvi, if somebody became tummy on the 7th day, the Chos of a Nitma B'Shvi became tummy again on the 7th day, Einu maybe Ella carbon echad. You keep on bringing only one carbon because the obligation of the carbon doesn't begin until the 8th day. So therefore, you never reach that obligation. So you bring only one carbon, but you continue you count a number of Naziris and again and again and again. This follows the view of Rabbi Yehuda, as Tosha explains. Nitma b'shmini, if you became tummy on the 8th day, the chaz of a nitma became tummy again on the 8th day. So it's every time the new series, but also another carbon. Maybe carbon, I'll call echad ve'echad. You make a carbon every single one, and every single one you bring a new carbon. And the maschil amayim b'yad. But when do you start counting in Naziris? On the 7th day. On the 7th day. If you became tummy on the 7th day, you start counting on the 7th day, which is exactly David Rabbi Lezer, which follows the view of Rabbi Yehuda, which places on the Rosh understood. However, Chachamim say carbon echad ala kol. Chachamim say that they hold that not like Rebbe, that you're not chayiv until the 8th day, and you start counting the new series on the 8th day. So you bring one carbon on everything ad chiyavi chatosid. But they say Not like we learned Rebbe before, just as soon as you hit the morning, it's even though you didn't bring the kabbalas, the fact that you're obligated means if you become tummy, it's a new series. The Chacham say, no, you had to bring at least one carbon in order to say it's a new series. If you didn't bring any kabbalas, it's still a continuation of your previous tumah. Achi Yavi, now you bring 3 kabbalas, chatas and oil and asham, you have to bring at least Achi Yavi chatasi. You have to bring your carbon chatas. Hevi chatasi. What happened? You brought your chatas. Benitma, you brought your chatas, and then you became tummy. The heavy chatas and nitma, so you kept on repeating it every time after you brought the chatas, you became tummy again. So it's a new series. Maybe karma kolech, you bring a karma in each one. So these chachamim hold different than before with Rebbe. They hold it is the 8th day, but you had to bring at least one carbon chatas before we say, oh, and now you became tummy. It's a new tumah. Heavy chatas and heavy hashamay. If you brought your carbon chatas, but you didn't bring the other carbon, for example, the asham, minor. It's already counting as a new series. Rabbi Shmuel, Benoy, a 4th opinion. Rabbi Shmuel, so we have Rabbi Yisrael, Rabbi Lezer agree. We have Rebbe, he says just the 8th day in the morning. We have the Chacham, we say you have to bring at least a carbon chatos. Comes along Rabbi Shmuel, Benoy, Rabbi Yechim, and and he says that you have to bring at least 2 carbonas. Kishem shechatasa yikvasei. If you want to start counting a new series of nazir, you have to bring a carbon chatas and you have to bring a carbon asham. Says Gemara. I understand the view, but Rabbi Lezer says that the 7th day already you start counting a new series, even though the carbon is only the 8th day, because Amakra, the pasuk says, we had before, by Yemahu on that day means the day that you finish your tumah. It's not the day that to bring the kabbalah, like we said at the top of the page. Rabbanan, what did Rabbanan do with the word by Yemahu? So Rebbe before said by Yemahu would tell you that in the morning, even though you didn't bring any kabbalas, that day came around, you start counting a new series. The Rabbanan say by Yemahu come and tell you, even though you didn't bring all 3 kabbalas, you bring your carbon asham, you just brought your chatas, you start counting a new series. And Rabbi Shmuel, what does he do with by Yemahu? He says you have to bring your chatas and your asham, which is v'chiper, which is a kapara. Why mention by Yemahu? Why does the pasuk say by Yemahu tell you what that day? Sure, it's obvious that day. Amalach, he tells you, because there are 3 kabbalas. There's chatas, there's asham, and there's oila. And Bayem will tell you that even though you didn't bring all 3 kabbalas, you only brought 2 out of the 3, it's good enough. Even though you didn't bring the oila, you brought the other 2, it's good enough. I hold, Rabbi Shmuel says that the oila is part of your kapara. It's not just a gift, it's part of your atonement. So if you would just read the pasuk without Bayemahu, you would have thought you had to bring all 3 kabbalas. So he said, Bayemahu on that day, you just brought a chatas and an asham, good enough, even though you didn't bring the oila. But Rabbanan disagree. They say for that you don't need a pasuk. Why? Because they say oil is not part of the kapara. Oil is more like a gift. Oil it's only a gift. You can do a voluntary oil, or you cannot do a voluntary chatas, a sin offering. You can do a voluntary asham, but you can do a voluntary oil. So for a voluntary oil, I don't need a pasuk to tell me by Yemahu to tell me that you already start counting the zeros. This is not part of the kapara. The chipper refers only to chatas. So they're arguing whether the oil is here as a gift to Hashem, or is it actually a part of the covenant? Says Gemara, "My tamai the Rabbanan." What's the logic of the Rabbanan? The Tanya, as Gemara says, we learned in Hebraism. It says a pasuk, the Hazel Hashem made Israel. It says the Hazel Hashem. You become a Nazir to Hashem. You start counting to Hashem your day in the Naziris. And then it says behavi keves ben shnasei la'asham. Then you bring your asham. In other words, why would the rabbi make a difference between the chatas and the asham? So we see clearly in the pasuk. It says you count your naziris, and then it says behavi keves ben shnasei la'asham. So in other words, you start counting even before you brought your asham. Ma tamid lemer. What's it coming to tell us? The fish of it, because generally speaking, we find generally find that when can you start eating? If you were telling me when can you start eating kachim again once you brought your asham? Yochar thought in the case of others as well. It's same thing here. Tamalayim is on the positive. Behavi. You start counting in the zeros, and then behavi. And then you bring your asham. Even though you didn't bring your asham, you can count. That's where the Rabbanan gets there. They learn from. No, and Rabbi Shmuel, what does he do with that pasuk? It seems clearly it says count your naziros, and then you bring your asham. And yet Rabbi Shmuel holds you have to bring your chatas and your asham before you start counting. Rabbi Shmuel, the hazer, it says the pasuk, the hazer. You start counting. The you bring your asham. Amos Hazer. So we read the pasuk as if it says, "When do you start counting bisman she'egi when you already brought behavi means not that you will bring your asham, but you already brought your asham." Okay, says the Gemara, Saman Tana. Who learned the following? If a woman makes a nazir, again, we have a number of examples we had where a woman becomes a nazir. So this woman became a nazir, and then when she made a vow to become a nazir, then she became tamei. The then the husband annulled it. Remember, he has the window; he can annul it, and anything that affects their relationship, he can annul during that window. And we had a whole question when we had in the Dora, when a husband knows it, we'll have it again later, when a husband knows it, is it retrospective or is it only from now on? Megas Gaius or is it Oiker? So, as we'll come to discuss right now. So the husband knows it, Mevia, she still has, we say that she committed a sin, as if to say that the husband is only annulling it from now on, but she doesn't bring all the kabbanas. She only brings chatas ha'oif. She only brings the chatas of the bird, but the eina mevia oilas ha'oif does not bring the oilas ha'oif. Now, what's going on here? If she's really a nazir till now, then she should bring all the kabbanas. If you tell me it's retrospective, they bring no kabbanas. Why chatas ha'oif? This follows the view of Rabbi Shmuel. This follows the view of Rabbi Shmuel. Why that you you bring chatas, even though you didn't bring the asham until later. Now, what's going on here? So the Gemara, in other words, remember, according to the Rabbanon, the oilas ha'oif, according to the Rabbanon, the oilas ha'oif is purely a present. If the oilas ha'oif is purely a gift, you can always bring a gift, you voluntary. If oilas ha'oif, like Rabbi Shmuel says, is not just a gift, it's part of the kapara, you don't bring the oilas ha'oif. You don't bring it. So why do you bring a chatas? Says the Gemara, what's going on here? If he uproots it and unravels the whole thing, chatas likes it. Why bring any carbon? Why you bring a chatas? She didn't do anything wrong because retrospectively you never knows it. But if it's only going forward, then she was a proper nose until this moment. So why does she bring an oilasev as well? Says the Gemara, the truth of the matter is completely unravel it. Nothing happened. But you know why she brings a chatas ha'oif? Because she committed a sin. What do you mean? But she wasn't a nazir. What sin did she commit? The fact that during this time she denied herself drinking the wine. But remember, we learned it before a few times. Nazir HaKapor, who says that a nazir, the whole idea of a nazir is wrong because you are denying yourself things that the Torah permitted us. So therefore, bring a chatas ha'oif as a kapara for that, even though she wasn't really a nazir. Rabbi Shmuel, the great man said, what does it mean when a person becomes a nazir, becomes tamei, he has to bring a kapara for the sin? What sin did he commit? Or she commit? They denied themselves drinking wine. And if somebody just denies themselves of wine, they consider a sinner. If you deny yourself everything in life, you deny yourself, surely, like fasting, surely it's a bad thing. No, so how come the Torah then only says this regarding a nazir who became tamei? Every nazir. But nazir tamei ksiv. But now I feel nazir Torah coming in, you tell me even a nazir Torah is committing a sin. Really, a nazir kapper holds a nazir also sinner. And at time when they see nazir tamei, so why does the Torah refer to by nazir tamei? Because they repeated the sin. First, you became a nazir, and now you became tamei as well. You weren't even careful. You were derelict in your responsibilities. So what are we saying here? Really, she was not a nazir. The husband undermined it completely. But according to this brisa, but we paskin megas guy is only the future. This brisa says it's retrospective, but why does she bring a chatas ha'oif? Because the very fact that she became a nazir, even though she wasn't, and she denied herself drinking wine, therefore you bring a chatas ha'oif. Okay, we'll pause here for